The party continues on the first day of this new century. Even as the cleanup begins, the celebrations just don't quit, but they are joyful and tranquil.
We're deeply grateful that the celebrations were both jubilant and peaceful.
Americans optimistic about the future.
We're excited about seeing what new advances are going to take place with technology, and we're excited about going forward.
And there is a collective sigh of relief. No trouble, no Y2K glitches.
I'm pleased to report that what you already know, that we don't have anything to report.
And in Russia, the new president wastes no time showing who's in charge. All this on the dawning of a new millennium circling the globe.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News, reported by John Seigenthaler.
Good evening on the first day of 2000, when the world was prepared for something to go wrong. By all accounts, that simply didn't happen. There were no major computer problems reported, and despite the concern about terrorism, the worldwide celebrations were remarkably peaceful. We begin our coverage tonight on the new millennium with NBC's Robert Hager at the Y2K Command Center in Washington. Good evening, Robert.
Good evening, John. Well, things couldn't be going more smoothly. So smoothly, some are even asking if all that preparing was necessary. But the headline is that the hour is come and gone, and on this day after, everything's fine. Planes are flying, though holiday travel's extremely light. Trains are running. Traffic lights functioning. Lamps lighting. There's not been a single power outage anywhere in the U.S. attributed to a Y2K problem. Cell phones are working, regular phones too. The water's running everywhere, cash machines spitting out money, and the internet operating without delays. The government's Y2K czar, John Koskinen.
I think I would say I'm pleasantly surprised. We expected that we would see more difficulties early on, particularly around the world.
The nation's emergency director, James Lee Witt.
I'm pleased to report that what you already know, that we don't have anything to report.
It's been a day for testing, airlines checking things like luggage. The New York Stock Exchange provided this video of testing systems for Monday's reopening of trading. Glitches have been only minor, without affecting service. Small problems fixed quickly at some power plants and with some air traffic control equipment. A malfunction of a military spy satellite, Defense Department's John Hamre.
For a short period of time, we were not able to process the information that the satellites were sending to us, but we're operational now.
Hospital emergency rooms watching for problems with medical equipment, finding none. George Washington University Hospital's Dr. Ray Lucas.
Certainly the flu bug has affected us much more than the Y2K bug, which I think is probably non-existent.
So was all the talk about potential Y2K problems a lot of hype? Ask the nation's retailers who did a brisk business on this New Year's holiday. Kathy Hotka speaks for them.
I know there's been some question about whether all of this time and effort has been wasted. And the answer is a resounding no way.
Officials argue it's all going well only because problems were fixed in advance.
My hope is that people, as they look at the literally billions of dollars spent on this problem, will understand that rather than this being an example of why we shouldn't pay attention to problems, this should be viewed, I think, as a demonstration that a major problem has been met because people paid attention to it and worked together.
And there are a few hurdles left. Tomorrow will be one test, for instance, when return travel from the holidays picks up. Monday, a big test when much of the nation goes back to work. And tests later, too, leap year day, for instance. But clearly, we're over the biggest hump now, and the Y2K bug has been met and conquered. John?
NBC's Robert Hager to the Y2K Command Center tonight. Thanks. In the nation's capital, as in many cities, the day after a spectacular celebration. This one under the watchful eye of the president and the First Lady. NBC's David Bloom is at the White House tonight. Good evening, David.
Good evening, John. President Clinton says he's just grateful that the New Year's celebrations were both jubilant and peaceful. And tonight, the president's holding out the prospect that the new century might bring, quotes, unprecedented peace, freedom, and prosperity. Here in the nation's capital, as elsewhere, Americans awoke with a sigh of relief and a sense of wonder, cleaning up from last night's carefree festivities on the Washington Mall, lining up in unusually large numbers for the daily White House tour.
Oh, I'm really excited about the new millennium, and I think it started out wonderful here in Washington. We had a great time.
In his first 21st century address to the nation, President Clinton marveled at how billions of people had watched the worldwide celebrations, sharing an interconnectedness which he says is the key to understanding the new millennium.
To advance our interests and protect our values in this new, interconnected world, America clearly must remain engaged. We must help to shape events and not be shaped by them.
But even as the president, looking exhausted, spoke glowingly of how technologies like the internet have transformed the globe, many Americans enjoying a beautiful New Year's Day in the nation's capital expressed unease about the technology reshaping their lives and skepticism about the prospects for unprecedented peace.
I hope that the new technology is used for the right purposes.
The violence, I wish that would stop. You know, I'd like to see that stop. I'd like to see us become one country, one people.
But as Y2K worries vanished, many others were upbeat.
We're excited about seeing what new advances are going to take place with technology, and we're excited about going forward.
Bottom line here at the White House, they're just relieved. No millennium violence, no major Y2K bug. Rarely has so little happened in Washington, and so many people rejoiced. John?
NBC's David Bloom at the White House. David, thanks very much. Now to Russia and the fallout from Boris Yeltsin's surprise New Year's Eve celebration. Within a matter of hours, the new president is already making his mark. NBC's Dana Lewis reports from Moscow.
Even before the first light of a new year dawned on Red Square, Russia's new president showing who's in charge. A surprise visit to a war zone. Vladimir Putin congratulates his army, hands out hunting knives with his name inscribed on the blades. But he stayed away from the more than 200,000 Chechen refugees still under bombardment New Year's Day.
There simply can't be challenged. I mean, he's already acting president, will be president, because he's very tough, because he speaks the language of force.
Within hours of Boris Yeltsin's surprise early resignation, Putin made his first public address as president to his nation. A New Year's Eve warning.
There is and will not be any power vacuum in the country.
He cautioned against anyone threatening his authority. He promised to protect freedom of speech and freedom of conscience, but some found that unconvincing.
Nothing in his background indicates that he shares liberal views.
Putin now commands constitutional authority in Russia and has the West's attention as a 47-year-old man now with the black briefcase, inside a button that launches Russia's nuclear weapons. No critical decision to make today, as computers rolled over into the year 2000 at Russia's military early warning command center. Generals claimed there were no glitches from Y2K. Cooperation and reassurance on the ground in America. At Peterson Air Force Base, Russians and Americans sat side by side through midnight, monitoring launch sites, all quiet. Today, President Clinton spoke with Putin by telephone for 10 minutes. They exchanged New Year's greetings and pledged to work together towards resolving differences.
For the moment, Russia's acting president. To keep the job, Vladimir Putin must win presidential elections this spring. Now, out of Boris Yeltsin's shadow, Putin is about to reveal more of who he is and in what direction he intends to take Russia. Dana Lewis, NBC News, Moscow.
And when NBC Nightly News continues in a moment, the day after the night before, the celebrations continue in this country and around the world, even as the cleanup gets underway. From coast to coast on the first day of the new century, it has been a time of recovery, relief, and a whole lot of cleanup. We have two reports, beginning with NBC's Dan Abrams in the East.
In New York, even cleanup can be cause for celebration. Today in Times Square, 5 tons of confetti was blown, swept, and ultimately disposed of. That's in addition to another 30 tons of garbage from the world's biggest New Year's Eve bash.
This was the worst I ever seen. We kept cleaning, the wind kept blowing, and it was like fighting a losing battle.
All along the East Coast, from Boston to Miami, municipal hangovers were cured with brooms and dustpans, while the partiers recovered on their own. In some places, the festivities just kept on going. In Philadelphia, it was the annual Mummers Day Parade. And in New Orleans, a celebration with the world's largest Bloody Mary, 1,000 gallons worth. And then there are the traditional New Year's Day bowl games. But in many big cities like New York, fear led some to wait till today to celebrate in public areas like Times Square.
I was very concerned about how the security. So that's why we didn't come last night. That's why we're here today. After we saw that everything was okay, now we're here.
And while New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani was in Times Square last night, he too was breathing easier today.
There was a great deal of relief. And for all the things that people were afraid of, we have to be very thankful that we got through all of it.
For some, getting through all of it meant something special. These Virginia twins straddled the centuries. A girl born in the final moments of 1999, her brother in 2000. And this man never thought he would even live to see the 21st century.
And, I was so dedicated towards living past midnight and getting to 2000. I didn't care if they bombed the building as long as they did it after midnight.
And while midnight came and went without any problems, in New York, as workers dismantled the final remnants of the party, the police were still on hand, just in case. Dan Abrams, NBC News, New York.
This is Kelly O'Donnell in Pasadena, where the day after is the main event. A tradition marching into its third century, the 111th Tournament of Roses Parade, watched by more than 365 million TV viewers around the world and by hundreds of thousands along the 5.5-mile route.
It's big. It's spectacular, something kids have to see at least once.
A vision less dazzling in San Diego. The bagging, the shoveling, the unexpected signs of that party long over.
I'm sure we'll find some wild things. We haven't made it to the fountain yet. I don't know what's floating in the fountain yet.
In Portland, Oregon, back in business. Plywood comes off downtown shops. And a sure sign the party's over, the portable toilets trucked out. But farther north in Seattle, no need for the big cleanup. The Millennium Bash at the Space Needle canceled. Fears of a possible terrorist threat. The mayor's office opted for a low-key fireworks show instead.
I wasn't that disappointed. People could stay home and watch.
But Seattle, like Virginia, gets bragging rights too, thanks to Santos and Orlando Villafuerte, the West Coast Millennium twins. One brother before midnight, the other 2 hours later. Siblings a century apart. A different delivery in Los Angeles. Cash arriving on time, no banker's hours here, a first. Some branches open on this holiday.
We've had a few customers. They're pretty reassured that there's been no problems.
Spit out money, I mean, it works. The world didn't come to an end.
The 20th century, now just history, a new year and new era marked in time. Kelly O'Donnell, NBC News, Los Angeles.
When NBC Nightly News continues in a moment, London and points east party on. On this January 1st, it's become clear that many people on the planet have no intention of cutting short their Millennium Party. Here's NBC's Jim Maceda.
From daybreak on a remote island in Kiribati, South Pacific, to noon church bells across England, to Samoa, the last place on Earth to usher in the new year, January 1st, 2000 swept across 24 time zones today, the dawn of the third millennium. As the sun rose over the Great Wall of China, Mount Fuji, Japan, the ancient pyramids of Egypt. Today, a world day of peace for the Catholic Church. Pope John Paul II saying Mass in Rome.
I wish a happy and blessed New Year.
The 79-year-old pontiff's prayer that peace become the language of all people. And at least for today, that wish largely coming true. Even as the debris of midnight parties, drawing millions of Europeans, was collected in the squares of Berlin, Rome, and London, the celebrations continued, largely without incident. A street fair right next to Buckingham Palace. Royal security and protocol exceptionally relaxed. Even the Queen getting in the festive spirit. She kissed her consort, Prince Philip, in public for the first time. In downtown London, a New Year's Day parade, including over 6,000 young cheerleaders from across America, flown here on what is being called the biggest peacetime airlift of U.S. civilians.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I didn't want to miss it.
While on the other side of the planet, tourists flock to Cambodia's Angkor Wat Temple. In a country ravaged by war, thoughts today also of peace.
Well, I would hope that for Cambodia and the rest of the world, that in the next millennium, people would have more peace.
And on a day when so many fear terrorist attacks, computer mayhem, even nuclear meltdown, The worst millennial glitch in London, an apparent broken clutch on the world's largest Ferris wheel, keeping people off. There was some violence. French riot police clashed with youths in Paris and Strasbourg, who set fire to dozens of cars overnight, arresting 150. In Copenhagen, Denmark, more clashes and arrests. But mostly revelers across 7 continents on their best behavior. From Tiananmen Square, Beijing, to Edinburgh, Scotland, people mark this unique day in joy. Jim Masada, NBC News, London.
A program note now. International, domestic, and political developments in the year 2000 are the topics tomorrow on NBC's Meet the Press. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright and John Koskinen, the chairman of the President's Council on the year 2000 conversion, are Tim Russert's guests. When NBC Nightly News continues in a moment, the new century in an ancient land. To Jerusalem now, where, to great relief, one peaceful day has followed another. NBC's Martin Fletcher tonight on fears not realized.
The sun rises over the Judean hills, the dawn of the millennium in the Holy Lands. The hope here is for peace. Church bells toll. The muezzin calls the faithful to prayer, while Jews pray silently at the Western Wall. For Jews, this is the year 5760. For Muslims, year 1420, and they all largely ignored Christian celebrations of the millennium. In the Holy City, 3 great religions rub shoulders, and the result is often friction.
Oddly enough, in the Holy Land, there's almost no knowledge or understanding of Christianity or of Islam among the Jews.
Jerusalem, worshipped as the city of peace, has seen little of that. Each religion has its fundamentalists who claim they are closest to God.
Islam is a great message. The Holy Quran is a response to your questions.
But while many who live here say the religious presence can be overwhelming, visitors are often inspired by the cloak of faith that wraps the city.
I've been so impressed by just being in a place where the 3 world religions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, have evolved over the centuries, and it's a wonderful place.
It just sends a tingle down your spine when you go in there to see this is where he was crucified.
Israel made an enormous effort over the last months to make sure the millennium passed quietly, and it worked. With Pope John Paul scheduled to visit the Holy Lands in March, the hope is that this quiet and peaceful start to the new year will continue. But security experts warn that December 31st was just another day of high alert.
The new year of the millennium is all year long, and we have to keep our guard up throughout the year 2000.
Police worry there are plenty more excuses for terrorist attacks in the name of God, and a lot more time. Martin Fletcher, NBC News, Jerusalem.
Off Miami's Key Biscayne this morning, Coast Guard crews picked up hundreds of refugees from a boat run aground. 406 people, most of them Haitian, were packed onto the 60-foot boat, which threatened to capsize as tides went out. Nearly 300 initially refused to leave the ship. The Coast Guard says it's likely all of them will be sent home. When NBC Nightly News continues in a moment, young people trying to preserve an old method of communications. Finally tonight, preserving a piece of history. New technology and competition from the internet have prompted an effort to keep an old communication system alive. Here's NBC's Colleen Dominguez.
Hello, CQ, CQ, CQ20, CQ20.
They're called hams or radio amateurs. For almost 100 years, Americans have had a fascination with radio.
K7RAT.
Often becoming involved as children. And unlike many other hobbies which come and go, keeping it as a lifelong interest. Hams were the pioneers of early radio, the people with technical backgrounds, who started out as tinkerers and often became the innovators and inventors.
Everyday things we use that owe their roots to experimentation in radio would include your microwave oven, your cordless telephone, the garage door opener.
A man named Marconi proved radio was feasible when he transmitted signals between Europe and North America. The Titanic disaster showed radio could be a lifeline. Over the years, hams have spent thousands of hours of public service during earthquakes, tornadoes, and hurricanes. Radio played a key role in World War II, assisting the war effort by helping to break the Japanese codes. After the war, radio was critical to America's space program. But America's hams are getting older. The average age now in the mid-50s. People started worrying about who would be the tinkerers of the future, especially when America's youth seem more interested in the internet.
Amateur radio 30 years ago was much like the internet is becoming today.
So a group of radio amateurs in Boring, Oregon came up with an idea, Kids Day.
What's the weather like down there?
Today, several hundred children took part in the event, some for the first time.
My favorite animals are dogs and horses.
Others, like Stephen Reinhardt, a ham radio veteran at 13, remembers one of his first contacts with a scientist at the South Pole.
He measures the hole in the ozone layer.
Unlike email, where typing has replaced talking, Kids Day showed there's nothing quite like hearing it for yourself.
You like rollerblading? Mm-hmm.
Colleen Dominguez, NBC News, Los Angeles.
And that is NBC Nightly News. I'm John Seigenthaler in New York. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning on Weekend Today and right back here tomorrow night.